G'day everyone. As it's now only a matter of days, it should be sometime this coming week I think, where we hear about the announcement of the Nikon camera, mirrorless camera. I thought I'd have a discussion with you about what the ultimate A7S III could be, and it'll be interesting to see if any of my predictions here come true. It may also depend as well if Sony can add things by firmware and things like that, depending on what they announce with the Nikon cameras and also the Sony cameras coming up. But I thought we could talk about what the ultimate camera could be for the A7S III, and this is what I believe would really be a game changer and would probably blow everything out of the water. Now, I'm not convinced all these things that I'm talking about are going to be announced, but they're possibilities of what I think could be announced, depending on what other companies are offering with their mirrorless cameras coming up. So let's have a look at that now, and then I'll sort of sum up a little bit at the end. But I'm going to go over to this document that I've just created, and I've just said here that it's basically the Sony a7 III Ultimate specifications that they could actually release. And like I said, we're going to know shortly how many of these sort of features they're going to offer. Some are, I think, are really quite out there, but you never know what they could actually offer. They certainly decided to do some amazing things with the a7 III. So let's go through and just have a look at this, just to see what they're saying and what I think could be possible. Now, the first thing that I'm saying there, that this could be the ultimate fusion sensor. Now, why I'm saying that is because I do think, personally, and I do hope this happens, that I would love Sony to release a camera that is just amazing for both stills and video. Now, I know they have the a7 III for that now, but now Sony could be releasing the ultimate type camera to give us that feature of being able to do stills and video at the same time. And if you look at the way the industry is moving, this is definitely the way that the industry is moving at the moment. So what I mean by that is things like this. Now, they could potentially give us something like an 18 megapixel stack sensor. Now, I've got a feeling that they may give us something like the A9 sensor in this, but more tailored toward the video side of things. And that's why I've said 18 megapixels. Now, 18 megapixels will be amazing. I used to shoot a Nikon D3S, and that had 12 megapixels, and that was more than enough for me to shoot weddings in those days, and also to produce things like big posters and things like that. So don't count out using less megapixels. 18 megapixels would still be ideal if you were dealing with a wedding type scenario where you were shooting stills and video at the same time. If they could give us that 18 megapixels, it would be just wonderful. They may do something even better and give us the 24, but we don't know yet. But I've got a feeling that it may be that 16 to 18 megapixel size. The other thing too is I don't think they're going to offer the resolution of the A9, in other words giving us 20 frames per second, because they'll want to keep that for the ultimate sports camera, which they've got in the A9, but they could easily give us the same as what the a7 III has, which is 10 frames per second. And they also, if they're using the same sensor as the A9, they could give us that 1/32,000th of a second shutter speed, which would also be amazing as well. And I do think they're going to improve the stabilization, the image stabilizer, and they probably will give us the same or not even better than what the A7R2 has, the A7R3 I mean. The a7 III only has 5 stops, the a7R3 has 5.5, so it's a little bit better. So this being more the video camera, they'd have to, I believe, give us better on sensor stabilization. So it's going to be interesting to see what they give us there as well. So that's the first stage, and I've got a feeling that they may base this on the A9 sensor, but that's just me guessing. The second thing that I would like to see them do is the autofocus, and this is why I said I think they'll use the A9 sensor here, and then you'll get the same A9 focusing, which is that 693 point wide area phase detection autofocus, 93% coverage, the same as the A9. So I think that's probably what's going to happen there. And if they give us that focusing that the A9 has, or even the a7 III, I think that's a given now, though. This is going to be an amazing camera or something like that to put on a gimbal. So that's why I believe we'll get the same autofocus as the A9. ISO, I do believe they're going to expand this. Now, I've got a feeling that they may give us a usable ISO, or the native ISO, say something around 100 to 400,000. I know that's pushing it up, but I do believe they could probably do that if they wanted to. Now, they may give us some ridiculous expanded resolution of something like 50 to 800,000. They may even try, if they wanted to push the million. We just don't know how far they're going to push the ISO on these cameras. I mean, I actually would be really happy if they can give really clean 12800 native resolution, and when I say that, I mean really clean at that resolution, and there's probably no reason why Sony can't do that. But you know, we may get something like this 100 to 400,000 in the native ISO. I tend to never use over, say, 6400, so this really is pushing for filming if you don't want to add lighting and things like that, which would be great for videographers that aren't using lighting and they want to sort of shoot naturally. The next thing that I believe will happen, obviously, is it's going to have the same battery as the A9, the A7R3 and the A7 III. I think it'll be the exact same battery. I can't see them making any changes with this, but it's going to be interesting. There is one thing that I've left out on this. It probably will get dual high-speed SD cards. I think that's probably what's going to happen, and I've left that out of this slideshow, so I thought that I'd just pop that in while I remember it. It may not be limited to the slower card like the other cameras are at the moment. EVF. Again, Sony have announced that they're going to produce this amazing EVF, and I think it was going to be shipping around about November. That's why I've got a feeling that this will be announced probably at Photokina, and then it will ship later on this year. They have announced that they've got this new 5.6 million dot EVF, and basically it's double the resolution that the current cameras have, like the A9 and the A7R3, which would be amazing. And it also has a refresh rate of 240 frames per second, which is going to be amazing for motion, as they said, perfect for motion there. This is something really that they will only offer, I think, at the beginning on their high-end video cameras. This would be great for things like doing autofocus, things like that. Manual focus. Would be brilliant if you were, say, using it to get macro, where it's very, very hard and very critical to get focus sometimes, and that could be an amazing thing. And I think this is clearly what they're going to be waiting on before they release this new camera, and it certainly will make it better for shooting video if you shoot manual lenses. I know some people don't have issues even manually focusing with the A7 III. I do definitely prefer to manual focus with my A9 though, because it has definitely got a better EVF, and this one will be 2 times that resolution, so that's going to be outstanding. So I can't wait to see that. Screen, I'm not sure if this is actually going to happen, but they could release a fully fold-out, fully articulating screen. Now, I've got a feeling that this may be with the A6-700, but they may just do this. You never know which way Sony are going to go here. They may give us this as well, and even though it's a bit bigger, it would be like the ultimate vlogging camera as well. That's why I believe this fold-out articulating screen would be announced with the A6-700, but I'm hoping that they do announce something like this for the A7S III as well. It would be just wonderful for the way that I shoot. Other videographers have said they don't want that, but I'm talking about my wish list here and what they could add to these cameras to make it just amazing. Resolution, I think 4K 60p is a given. I think that's a definite thing that they're going to be offering on this camera. They may do something even extra if they need to, and which is give us 120p. And that could be outstanding for slowing things down. And they may even give us 10-bit video. I'm not convinced that we'll get 10-bit though. I think they may leave that for other cameras. But I'm sure that we're going to get the 4K 60p, hoping that we get 4K 120p, which would be just amazing. And 10-bit again would be just that extra bit that would give us this foundation to be able to manipulate the image more and have nicer gradients in skies and things like that, where having 8-bit can be an issue if you're trying to push and things like that. But I always now shoot basically 1080p 60, and that gives me the ability to slow down. That's the only reason why I'm not shooting 4K anymore. As soon as this camera is released, which is 4K 60p, I will probably shoot everything in 4K 60p, and then at least that gives me the ability to slow it down 50% in Final Cut. And obviously if you had 120p, well, that would be even better. So that's the resolution that I am hoping that we get. I'm sure we'll at least get 4K 60p. This is one thing that I really hope that Sony give us. After shooting with this little baby, the RX100, having the inbuilt ND on this is just amazing. Just to be able to turn that ND on. Now, I think it's only 3 to 4 stops on this, but boy, does it make a difference. I'm predicting that if Sony give us something like that, I'd love them to give us a professional version of this, which could be 8 stops internal ND. It would be just wonderful. I really do hope that Sony thinks about their videographers with this type of feature. Clearly it's able to be done because they have it in the RX100, so I'm just hoping that they give us something like this on the a7S III. It would be just wonderful, and not to have to carry around extra filters and things like that would be just amazing, so I'm really hoping that happens. Time-lapse, I do believe that Sony will probably, hopefully bring back time-lapse as a mode on the a7S III. It's been taken out of the A9, the a7 III and the a7R III. So I'm really hoping that they bring that back in. Now that is a really useful feature for videographers now, especially shooting Fusion, because all of us tend to now try to add time-lapse into our wedding videos, events, things like that, and that would be wonderful if they give us that ability to add that in. Yes, you can do it with S&Q, but it's not really enough. So Sony needs to give us that ability to do that again, and I'm hoping that's been added in the a7S III. This is another thing that I'd love them to add as well, which is a stealth mode, and I'm saying highly dim screens and silent shutter. Wouldn't that be amazing if you could really dim the screens down completely? If you remember, if you're shooting with these ridiculously high ISOs, you could even get contamination from the screen on the back of your camera, or buttons or whatever. You may get contamination through the front of your camera. So if you were light painting, for instance. So if you've got this stealth mode, will be unbelievable. And also the A9 has showed that you can shoot with total silent shutter without any penalty, and they may give us that ability if they use the A9 sensor as well. And so that could be incredible as well. They may even incorporate having lit buttons, which could be interesting too. If they really want to make this professional, like something like a D4S or whatever I used to have, the buttons could be lit for if you're dealing with low light scenarios. At least you can see the buttons that you're pressing. So that could be an amazing thing as well. HDMI, this is a wish list for me, particularly after having the GH5. I adored having the full HDMI cable. I hate having the smaller one. They basically damage the camera, they break. It's a real weak point of the actual camera. So I'm hoping that they give it as a full HDMI connector. I really do hope that Sony have done that in this case. Whether they can do it in the current body size is going to be interesting, but that's what I really hope we can get. Colour, I think clearly that we're going to get better colour science. Sony have been improving their colour science with every version. Now, I think since the A9, Sony colour science is easily good enough to compete with anything, and I've showed that when I did the video of the Canon 5D Mark IV against the A9. The colours were so close, it wasn't funny, and they have improved that a little bit even more with the A7 III, the A7R III, and I believe the A7S III will have even better colour science. So that's something we can also look forward to waiting for. Dynamic range, I think they'll probably really improve that on this camera, and I'm hoping that we'll get 15 to 16 stops. It's probably going to be the best camera that's ever available for dynamic range. They really have to outdo what the a7 III is giving us, because they have to make a reason for people to go up to this ultimate sort of video camera or fusion camera that Sony are going to offer us. So I do believe that we're going to get 15 to 16 stops of dynamic range there as well. So there's my prediction. So let me know what you guys think about that. I mean, I think some are maybe a little bit out there, but I'm hoping they really do pull the rabbit out of the hat and give us some of those things. It would be just amazing. I think it may depend too on what Sony, what Nikon and Canon release, because some of these things may be able to be added by firmware. That's still a possibility. You'd be amazed what you can still add in cameras by firmware. Panasonic and Fuji have proven that with how much they've improved their cameras over a period of time. So Sony could add some of these features via firmware, but I do believe that if Nikon and Canon do amazing releases, that Sony are going to do something unbelievable. And I may not be that far off in what I'm thinking here. So let me know in the comments down below what you think about that, because I'd love to know what you guys think about all of these possibilities. Whether you think that I've missed something, because I'd really be curious on that as well. And I'll see you all again soon for the next video, guys. So have a great day. Bye for now.